My transplant coordinator had a laminated card on her desk that said, "A perfect match occurs once in every 100,000 cases." I stared at that card for most of our first meeting. Maria, the coordinator, a woman who delivered catastrophic medical timelines with the energy of someone reading a grocery list, walked me through everything. The waiting list, the 4-hour window, the odds, the paperwork. "When we call," she said, "everything stops. You come in immediately. Your proxy signs consent. Surgery begins. And if my proxy can't make it," she looked at me the way people look at you when they don't want to say the thing they're about to say, "then we move to the next recipient." That was 3 months into being on the list. 4 months after my hepatologist sat across from me and explained that my liver, which I had never once thought about before that appointment, was operating at 31% and declining. Non-alcoholic, genetic, meaning I hadn't done anything to cause it, which sounds like good news until you realize it also means there was nothing I could have done to prevent it. I was 29, software engineer. The kind of person whose biggest health concern 6 months ago was whether the standing desk was actually helping. I informed my parents immediately. My mom, Carol, and my dad, Frank, both mid-60s, the type of people who show up to things, were listed as secondary contacts on all my hospital paperwork. But the hospital needed a primary proxy, someone who could sign consent if I was sedated or incapacitated, someone available, someone responsible. My older sister Rebecca volunteered before I finished explaining what the role involved. "Of course," she said. "Obviously, you're my brother." Rebecca was 35 and a vice president at a marketing firm. She used the word synergy without irony and scheduled personal calls 2 weeks in advance. But she was family. She knew the situation. She'd agreed. I told her exactly what Maria told me. "If they call," I said, "drop everything." "Obviously," she said again. She said obviously, the way people say it when they've already decided the situation will never actually arise. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. I was home, which was most places, those days. My energy levels had dropped to the point where the commute from bedroom to couch felt like a genuine undertaking. The jaundice had been getting worse. My doctor used the word progressing in a tone that made it clear he didn't mean it positively. Maria called my cell first. "We have a match. It's a strong one. You need to come in now." I want to be honest about what happened in that moment. I cried. Sitting on my couch in the apartment I'd barely left in 2 weeks. I just cried. The kind of crying that has nothing to do with sadness. It's just the body's response to information too large to process quietly. I texted Rebecca while Maria was still talking. "They found a liver. Hospital is calling you now." Maria was already dialing Rebecca's work line. What happened next, I only know because Maria told me afterward, and because one other source confirmed it. But I'll get to that. Rebecca's assistant answered. Rebecca was mid-presentation. Quarterly review. 40 executives on a Zoom call. The CEO in the top right corner of the screen. The assistant interrupted the meeting. Rebecca took her cell phone off the conference table. She stepped slightly away from her laptop. She did not mute her Zoom. Maria explained the situation the way she always did. Clearly, directly, without softening it. Donor liver. Perfect match. 4-hour window for surgical consent. Proxy signature required immediately. The 40 executives on the quarterly review. Zoom could hear both sides of the call. Rebecca said she was in the middle of a critical presentation. Maria explained again what 4-hour window meant in practical terms. Rebecca said the deal being presented was worth $2 million to the company. She said she couldn't leave mid-presentation. She said she would come after the meeting ended. "When does it end?" Maria asked. 5 o'clock. "That's 3 hours from now. The window. He's been sick for months. A few more hours won't change anything. I'll be there at 5. She hung up, returned to her slide deck. The CEO, a man named Alan Morrison, wrote something on his legal pad and said nothing. His face, by all accounts, was completely unreadable. The company recorded all quarterly review Zooms automatically policy 7-year retention. 40 executives just heard her choose a $2 million presentation over her brother's emergency transplant. The Zoom server logged every word. She went back to her slides like it was a spam call. Maria called me back immediately. She told me what Rebecca said. The exact words. I don't remember what I said in response. I remember the way the couch felt. The way the afternoon light was coming through the window at a specific angle. I remember those details very clearly, and I remember nothing else about that phone call. Maria was already dialing my parents before she hung up with me. My mom, Carol, answered on the first ring. Maria told her, donor liver, perfect match, 4-hour window, proxy consent needed, son already at the hospital being prepped. My mom said, where? We're coming now. That was the whole conversation. I know what happened next because my parents told me later. My mom shouted to my dad, Frank, who was in the other room watching television. He dropped the remote, grabbed his keys. They were in the car in under 4 minutes. My mom called Rebecca on the drive over. Voicemail. She left a message I would very much like to have heard. They arrived 55 minutes after Maria's call. Both of them out of breath, which, given that they were in their mid-60s and had just run from a parking garage, I found extremely on-brand for who they are as people. Maria met them in the corridor. They found me in pre-op. IV already in. Hospital gown. The monitors doing their thing. I saw my parents and I want to say I held it together. I did not hold it together. My dad, Frank, asked Maria what he needed to sign. She handed him the stack of consent forms. He signed every single page without reading them, which is something he would never normally do and which is the most loving thing I have ever witnessed. Surgery was authorized. They told me it would be about 9 hours. Before they wheeled me in, I asked where Rebecca was. My parents looked at each other. That was enough. That specific silence, the one where two people decide not to say the true thing because you're about to go into surgery, that particular silence is its own kind of answer. Rebecca arrived at the hospital after her meeting ended. She was not rushing. She walked up to the reception desk and told the nurse she was there to sign proxy consent for her brother Daniel. Liver transplant. The nurse checked the system. Consent had been signed over 2 hours ago. Patient was currently in surgery. Rebecca explained that she was the medical proxy, that there must be a mistake. The nurse explained the timeline. Hospital called proxy at roughly mid-afternoon. Proxy declined. Secondary contacts called. Parents arrived. Consent signed. Surgery began. Rebecca said she'd told them she'd be there after the meeting, that everything worked out, that her brother was in surgery, which was the whole point. The nurse's expression did not change. It worked out because his parents came. Rebecca went to the surgical waiting room. My mom was already there. She looked at Rebecca once and said nothing. My dad looked at her once and looked away. Rebecca tried to explain. Quarterly review. The $2 million deal. Corporate pressure. The timing was unfortunate, but the outcome was fine. My dad said, you told them the meeting was worth $2 million and he could wait. Rebecca said he was fine. The surgery was happening. Everyone was overreacting. My mom turned and looked at the wall. Rebecca sat down on the far side of the waiting room. She ordered a coffee from the hospital cafe app. While waiting for it, she opened Instagram. She took a photo of the hospital hallway. Slightly blurred, atmospheric. Posted it with a prayer hands emoji and the caption, praying for my brother. 34 likes in the first hour. Her brother was 2 floors below her on an operating table. She was curating her aesthetic. Both things were true simultaneously. The surgery was scheduled to take 9 hours. She had the coffee delivered to the waiting room. She scrolled her phone. My parents held hands and stared at the floor and did not speak to her. The surgeon came out sometime after midnight. He was still in scrubs. That specific kind of tired that surgeons have after long procedures. Not exhausted, just thoroughly used up. He told us the surgery was successful. The liver had been accepted. No complications. My mom made a sound I'd never heard her make before. My dad just nodded, slowly. The way people nod when they've been holding something very heavy for a very long time and someone has finally taken it from them. Rebecca jumped to her feet. Can I see him? The surgeon explained the protocol. Family, 2 at a time, 5 minutes. He was heavily sedated. Wouldn't know anyone was there. My parents went first. I know what they found because my mom described it to me later, in pieces, over several conversations, the way people describe things that are hard to hold in one telling. I was unconscious. Ventilator. Monitors. The specific bleached stillness of an ICU room at midnight. My mom held my hand for the full 5 minutes. My dad kissed my forehead. Neither of them spoke, because there was nothing to say that the situation hadn't already said. Then it was Rebecca's turn. She went in alone. She was in there for about 4 minutes. Earlier, while the surgery was still running and she was sitting in the waiting room, she'd posted an Instagram story. Hospital hallway. Prayer hands emoji. Praying for my brother. That was the opener. The warm-up act. The main event came at 1:47 in the morning. Me, unconscious, in the background of the frame. Monitors visible. The specific staging of someone who has decided that documentation is the priority. She adjusted the angle twice before posting. I found that out later from the timestamp metadata, and I want to be clear that I did not go looking for it. Someone sent it to me. The caption was, "Staying by my brother's side through his recovery. Family is everything to me." 67 likes by the time I woke up. Comments. "You're such a good sister. He's so lucky to have you. Family first always." She left the hospital at around 2 in the morning. My parents slept in the waiting room chairs. She took a photo of his unconscious body, adjusted the angle for composition, and published it. He was on a ventilator. She was considering her caption. Both happened in the same room on the same night. I woke up the following afternoon. The ventilator had been removed earlier that morning. I don't remember that part. The first thing I actually remember is the ceiling, and then a nurse explaining where I was and then asking where my parents were. "They stepped out for food," she said. "They've been here since last night." Of course they had. My sister? The nurse had a very careful way of pausing before she answered this. "She came after surgery was complete. Your parents handled the consent." I asked her to explain the timeline. She did. Quietly, without editorializing, the way medical professionals deliver information they know will land badly. Hospital called proxy. Mid-afternoon. Proxy declined. Secondary contacts reached parents, arrived. Consent signed. Surgery began. She came later? Several hours after surgery started, yes. I didn't say anything. My parents came back with coffee about 10 minutes later. My mom saw me awake and crossed the room faster than I'd seen her move in years. We stayed like that for a while. My dad's hand on my shoulder. My mom not saying anything, which for her is the loudest possible expression of emotion. Then I asked, "What did Rebecca say when they called her?" My dad looked at the floor. That the meeting was worth $2 million and you could wait. I stared at the ceiling for a long time. My mom said, "Don't think about it right now. Focus on healing." It worked out. I asked if Rebecca had come at all. My mom said, "After surgery, she took some photos." She took some photos, delivered quietly by a woman who had just spent 14 hours in a hospital waiting room. That sentence did more damage than any argument could have. I asked for my phone. Nobody tried to stop me. I opened Instagram, found Rebecca's profile. The ICU post was at the top. Me, unconscious, in the background. 67 likes. "You're such a good sister." I blocked her on every platform. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, everything. Didn't text her, didn't call, didn't compose a message and decide not to send it. Just blocked. Put the phone face down on the bed. Closed my eyes. What I didn't know, because I was in a hospital bed with a new liver and a significant amount of painkillers, was what was happening on the outside. By the weekend, Rebecca had posted 3 times. Friday evening, the ICU photo. Staying by his side. Family first. Saturday, a childhood photo of the two of us. Me maybe 8 years old, her maybe 14. Caption about being proud of her little brother for fighting. #sibling love. Sunday, a coffee cup. Hospital branding on the sleeve. Caption. Another day here. Wouldn't be anywhere else. The reality of Sunday was that she visited for approximately 40 minutes, left before lunch, and went to brunch with friends. My parents were at the hospital from 8 in the morning until after dinner. Her coworkers commented. Her college friends commented. People she hadn't spoken to in years left heart emojis. Rebecca told the people in her life that it had been an exhausting week of supporting her brother. What also happened that weekend, in a home office I would never see and didn't know existed, was this. Alan Morrison, the CEO, who had been sitting in the top right corner of that Zoom call, had a habit of reviewing quarterly meeting recordings on weekends. Standard practice. He was thorough in the way that people who have run companies for a long time tend to be thorough, methodically, without drama, checking everything. He reached the timestamp from mid-afternoon. He played it once, then he paused it, then he played it again, then a third time. I don't know everything about Alan Morrison. I know what became public record and what my parents told me later. But I know this one detail because it matters. His younger sister had died 5 years earlier. She was 34. She'd waited 2 years on the kidney transplant list and never gotten a match. He was in Chicago for a board dinner when it happened. He didn't make it back in time. He had a photo of the two of them on his desk. Her college graduation, both of them squinting into the sun. He knew, better than almost anyone in that company, what a perfect match meant. What a 4-hour window meant. What it meant to be the person who wasn't there when it counted. He opened Rebecca's Instagram. He read the posts. He read them slowly. Then he opened a private folder on his desktop and started dropping things into it. The Zoom recording. The timestamp. The transcript of the phone call. Rebecca's Instagram posts. The timestamps on those posts. The gap between when she said she'd come and when she actually arrived. He named the folder. Then he opened a text thread with his HR director, a woman named Karen. His message was 7 words. Need to meet Monday. Rebecca Smith situation. Karen's response was 1 word. Understood. While she was collecting likes on a photo of her unconscious brother, her CEO was building a case file. He knew what a transplant window meant. He'd lived the version where it closes before you get there. He was not going to let this go. 3 days after surgery, I was moved from ICU to a recovery ward. The difference between ICU and a recovery ward is mostly about the number of tubes and the quality of the television. Both involve a significant amount of lying still and being periodically checked on by people who are being very professionally cheerful. My parents came twice a day, morning and evening. Every day. Rebecca came once. She arrived mid-morning while I was awake, which I suspect she hadn't planned for based on her expression when she walked in and found me sitting up. She opened with enthusiasm. So glad I was okay. She'd been so worried. You were in a meeting, I said. She explained corporate pressure. Quarterly reviews. The timing was genuinely terrible, but everything had worked out, hadn't it? I almost died. But you didn't. I looked at her. She took a photo before she left. Caption: Recovery mode with my brave brother. 89 likes. After she was gone, I asked my nurse for the printed timeline. Call log, consent timestamps, surgery authorization, arrival records. She printed it without asking why. I read it 3 times. Folded it. Put it in the bedside drawer next to my phone charger. Then I texted my mom one question. Was it confirmed that Rebecca said the meeting was worth $2 million? My mom replied, yes. The hospital told them everything when they arrived. She was sorry. I wrote back, don't apologize. You came. She sent back a single heart. That was the whole conversation. I want to be honest about something. I didn't know any of what happened next while it was happening. I was at home, recovering anti-rejection medication twice a day. Weekly blood work. The kind of schedule that makes time feel thick and slow, where a Tuesday afternoon and a Thursday morning are essentially the same thing. My parents called. My friends checked in. I slept more than I had in years. Nobody told me what was happening at Rebecca's company. I found out later. Pieced together from multiple sources over several months. And I'm going to tell it the way I eventually understood it, which means telling some of it from a perspective I wasn't in the room for. 3 weeks after my surgery, Rebecca presented Q2 results to the board. The deal had closed. $2 million. She'd hit her targets. By every available metric, it had been a strong quarter. Board members congratulated her. The CEO, Alan Morrison, waited until the room had emptied. "Rebecca," he said, "stay after. I want to discuss Q3 strategy." She stayed. What she walked into was not a Q3 strategy discussion. The HR director, Karen, a title and a woman Rebecca would have interacted with primarily during onboarding and performance reviews, was already seated at the table, folder in front of her, pen uncapped. Rebecca described this moment later, to Todd, as the first sign something was off, which I think understates it. When your CEO asks you to stay after a board meeting and the HR director is already sitting there with a folder, the situation has a fairly specific grammar. Morrison connected his laptop to the boardroom screen. "I want to play something from the Q2 quarterly review recording." He played it from the timestamp. The room had the kind of acoustics that make audio very clear. No ambient noise. "Good speakers." Rebecca's voice filled the boardroom. Her words about the donor liver, the 4-hour window, her brother, the $2 million deal. "A few more hours won't change anything. I'll be there at 5. The recording ended. Morrison looked at her. "That was you. Taking a personal call during a company Zoom meeting without muting. Making a choice between a deal and your brother's emergency transplant. In front of 40 executives. On a recorded call." Rebecca said it was a private family matter, that everything had worked out, that the context was more complicated than a recording could capture. Karen looked up from her folder. "What context makes my brother can wait an acceptable response to an emergency transplant notification?" That's the thing about recorded audio. It doesn't have context. It just has what you said. Rebecca tried several approaches in sequence. Private family matter. Shouldn't be company business. Morrison. She'd made it company business by not muting on a recorded call in front of 40 people. Surgery went fine. Her brother was alive. Everyone was overreacting. Morrison. Because your parents came. You were 3.5 hours late. She'd gone as soon as the meeting ended. That had been her plan the entire time. Morrison turned the boardroom screen to a new display. Rebecca's Instagram posts, all 3 of them. Side by side with the Zoom audio transcript. The ICU selfie. The childhood photo. The coffee cup. The captions about staying by his side, family first, another day at the hospital, wouldn't be anywhere else. Morrison said that several executives had commented on those posts, that her professional identity and the company's name were attached to each other in ways that made her public representations a company matter. Rebecca said social media was personal, that everyone curated their lives online. Karen said, "You claimed credit for support you didn't provide. To an audience that includes your professional network. That's misrepresentation." Morrison asked if she remembered signing the company values document during onboarding. She said yes. "People over profit," he said. "Do you remember that one specifically?" She didn't answer. "You said $2 million was more important than your brother's life." On a recording. That we retained for 7 years. Karen slid a document across the table. Rebecca looked at it. Looked up. "You can't fire me for a family decision." Karen said the grounds were ethics violation, misuse of company recorded meeting, and fraudulent public representation tied to company identity. She said Rebecca was welcome to pursue legal action. She said the documentation was thorough. Morrison said security would escort her. 30 minutes to collect personal items. She spent 3 weeks building an Instagram story about being the perfect sister. He spent those same 3 weeks building a termination case. Turns out one of those holds up better under legal scrutiny. The security guard was already at the boardroom door. Rebecca was crying by the time they reached her office. Threatening legal action, which Karen had already anticipated and addressed. Asking to speak to Morrison again, which wasn't going to happen. She had 30 minutes. Co-workers watched through the glass walls. The word moved through the floor in the way that words move through offices. Fast, quiet, unstoppable. By the time she reached the elevator, everyone knew. Her assistant asked what happened. "Corporate politics," Rebecca said. Her badge deactivated at the lobby door. She heard it click before she pushed through. She sat in her car in the parking garage without starting the engine. Texted her husband Todd, Call me, now. I was fired. Sat there for 11 minutes. Then she drove home. Todd was 38 and an accountant. The kind of person who processed information methodically and didn't react to things until he'd understood them fully. He came home from work to find Rebecca at the kitchen table. She told him she'd been fired, that it was discrimination, that she'd been penalized for taking a personal call during a meeting, which was a private family matter that the company had no right to involve itself in. Todd asked what the call was about. She said it was about my surgery, that she'd come to the hospital as soon as she could, that everything had worked out. He asked how long after the hospital called. She said a few hours, that our parents had already been there. Todd's phone buzzed. He looked at it. An email from a colleague of his named Jake, who worked in Rebecca's former company's finance department. They'd overlapped at a previous job, stayed in loose contact. The email said, "Hey man, sorry about Rebecca. Rough situation. Heard the recording Morrison played in the board meeting today." Todd looked up from his phone. "What recording?" Rebecca went still. Todd called Jake. Jake was uncomfortable, the way people are when they realize they've said something that opened a door they can't close. He explained the Zoom call, the quarterly review. Rebecca's voice on the recording. What she'd said about the deal and about my transplant. Todd hung up. He looked at her for a long moment without speaking. "You said the deal was more important than his transplant." She said he didn't understand corporate pressure, the context, the stakes of that particular presentation. Todd picked up his own phone and opened Instagram. He read her posts slowly. The ICU photo, the captions, the comments, the likes. He read the one where she described it as an exhausting week of being there for her brother. "You posted his unconscious body," he said, "and called yourself a devoted sister." Rebecca said everyone managed their image online, that this was normal. Not about their brother's emergency surgery. The argument that followed was loud and then suddenly very quiet, the way arguments go when one person stops trying to convince and starts just looking at the other person, taking stock. Todd picked up his keys. He didn't say where he was going. He left. There's a specific kind of silence that happens when someone leaves a room without saying when they're coming back. Todd had that silence absolutely nailed. He moved to the guest bedroom 3 days later. Temporary, he said. Rebecca applied to 6 companies in the same industry. VP-level positions. Sent polished applications. Her resume was strong. The Q2 numbers were real. The deal had closed. Her track record was legitimate. The recruiters called Morrison as a reference. His reference was factual. No embellishment. No editorializing. He stated what had happened. The Zoom recording. The transplant call. The timeline. The termination grounds. The pattern repeated 6 times. No interviews offered. She updated her LinkedIn status to open to opportunities. The Industry Whisper Network, which is a real and functioning thing that operates entirely through coffee meetings and forwarded emails, activated. A VP who chose a deal over her brother's emergency transplant. The story moved through the sector the way these stories do. Not loudly, just persistently. Her friend group believed her version initially. They were loyal. They listened. Then, someone checked the Instagram timestamps against the timeline she'd described. The math didn't work. Her "another day at the hospital" coffee cup post had been geotagged at a brunch spot 6 blocks from the hospital. The invitations stopped coming. Todd served separation papers 2 weeks after the night he left. Rebecca was alone in the house for the first time. The dishes in the sink were hers. The silence was hers. The consequences were hers. She had chosen them, deliberately, on a recorded Zoom call, in front of 40 executives while her brother waited for a liver. She'd just had 3 weeks to understand that. 2 months after the termination, my parents came over together. My mom said I was looking better. My dad agreed. Both true. I'd started running again, short distances, and the color had come back to my face in a way that apparently people had been waiting to see for longer than they'd told me. Rebecca's name came up the way it always did. Carefully. With a brief pause on either side of it. She'd asked about visiting. My dad explained I'd blocked her number. Rebecca had called this dramatic. The surgery went fine, everyone overreacted, She didn't understand what the problem was. My mom looked at her and said, "Because we came, not you." Then my dad told me something I hadn't known. Morrison had sent them the recording. A few weeks after everything settled. He thought they should hear it, he said. Company property. Their decision what to do with it. They'd listened to it together at the kitchen table. My dad didn't describe what that was like. He just said it, quietly, and looked at his coffee. Rebecca had told them Morrison had no right. My dad said, it was company property, and we needed to hear it. They left after an hour. My mom hugged me at the door for slightly longer than usual. He sent the recording to her parents. Not out of cruelty. Out of the belief that families should know what choices their people make when they think no one important is watching. 40 executives and a 7-year data retention policy were watching. 6 months after the termination, Rebecca's former company held its annual ethics training. All 340 employees required attendance. I know about this because Karen sent me a brief email explaining what they'd done and asking if I had concerns I didn't. The ethics trainer introduced a new case study. Real example, she said. From within the company. She played the audio. Rebecca's voice. The transplant coordinator's voice. The 4-hour window. The deal. A few more hours won't change anything. The room went quiet. Former colleagues who recognized the voice said nothing. The trainer put 2 things side by side on the screen. The Zoom transcript on the left, Rebecca's Instagram posts on the right, the captions, the likes, the comments calling her a devoted sister. Morrison sat in the back row and said nothing. The segment became permanent. Ethics onboarding for new hires. Quarterly refreshers. Annual training. 300 employees a year now, hear those 15 seconds. Every new hire in their first week. She left the company. Her voice didn't. Her 15 seconds on an unmuted Zoom call became a permanent fixture in someone else's ethics curriculum. That's a specific category of consequence that outlasts everything else by years. A year after the surgery, my blood work came back clean across every marker. My hepatologist said excellent in the tone he reserved for results he was genuinely pleased with, which I'd learned to recognize as the highest register of emotion he typically expressed in a clinical setting. Back to work full-time. Running again. Real distances, not the tentative 10-minute walks of early recovery. Anti-rejection medication twice daily, which I'll take for the rest of my life and which costs me about 90 seconds of mental energy per day. My parents came over most Sundays. My dad was teaching me his chili recipe, which had been a family mystery for 30 years and turned out to involve an amount of cumin that I'm not prepared to share publicly. I'd started volunteering at a transplant support group on weekends. People in the waiting period, people post-surgery, families on the outside trying to understand what was happening. Both kinds of families, the ones who showed up and the ones who didn't. I understood both situations from the inside. A friend asked if I'd reach out to Rebecca eventually. Forgiveness, he said. I moved on, I said, by not including her. He said those weren't the same thing. I know, I said. That's the point. 18 months after the surgery, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera before answering. Rebecca, standing in the hallway with the posture of someone who'd rehearsed what they were going to say and was hoping the door would open before they lost their nerve. I didn't open the door. Danny. She knew I was there. I need to talk to you. I've lost everything, please. You didn't lose anything, I said. You traded it. Your job for a call you forgot to mute. Your marriage for an ICU photo you posted at 2 in the morning. Your reputation for a version of events that didn't survive a timestamp check. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. You made a choice, on recording, when I had 4 hours. Family forgives. When I needed family, you were on slide 14. I'm busy now, permanently. She stood there. I watched the camera. About 90 seconds. She didn't knock again. She walked to the elevator. Got in. The doors closed. I called my mom. Rebecca came to the apartment. What did you do? Didn't open the door. A pause. Good, my mom said. 90 seconds in a hallway. Roughly the same amount of time the transplant coordinator spent explaining the situation before Rebecca said her meeting was more important. Some numbers stay with you. 2 years after the surgery, I met a college friend named Brian for coffee. He asked about Rebecca the way people ask about things they've been avoiding. Carefully, with the question shaped so it could be dropped quickly if needed. 2 years of silence, I told him. Blocked everywhere, permanent. That's a long time, he said. So was the waiting list, I said. My phone buzzed. LinkedIn. A message from Morrison. He checked in occasionally, 3 or 4 times over 2 years, always brief. This one said the case study was still running, and he hoped that was all right. I wrote back. Alive, functioning liver, running again. 3 things she didn't prioritize. All fine. He replied in a minute. Your parents saved you. That's what real family looks like. I put the phone down. Brian asked what that was about. Her voice plays in their ethics training now, every quarter, 300 employees. He was quiet for a moment. She didn't lose anything, I said. She traded it. Her brother's life for a $2 million presentation. Her marriage for Instagram likes. Her career for 15 seconds on an unmuted call. Does she regret it? Not my question anymore. I checked my watch. Transplant group in 40 minutes. I co-facilitated now. I should go, I said. The support group? People whose families showed up and people whose families didn't. Both kinds come in. I know both situations personally. I left a tip on the table and walked out. Here's what happened. A woman chose a quarterly review over her brother's transplant. The Zoom server saved every word her CEO. A man who watched his own sister die waiting for a match that never came. Built a case file over a weekend. She was fired. Her husband left. Her industry passed. Her voice now plays to 300 employees every quarter as a lesson in what values actually cost. Her brother survived because 2 people in their mid-60s ran to their car and signed every form without reading a single one. He healed. He runs. He volunteers with families deciding what showing up is worth. He doesn't think about Rebecca. Not because he resolved anything. Because she stopped being part of his life, and his life kept going. That's the thing about people who don't come when it counts. You don't cut them off dramatically. You just stop saving them a seat. And one day you realize the seat has been empty so long you've forgotten it was ever theirs.